Set up for this live sesh here so we get TikTok going there. Give me 1 second, I'm almost done. There we go. There we go. I just like to get myself tested out, every couple of months. No, I'm just testing out my sound feature. Okay, guys, give me 1 second. I'm going to go live. I'm going to give you guys a mythic reading tonight. Give me 1 sec just to get everything settled in. What I'm going to do for you guys tonight is give you a true mythic reading. A couple of American mythology tales that have gone vastly underappreciated. So what I'm going to do is just set the right mood. I want you guys to imagine a different America, right? America not that long ago, right? But America going through a very turbulent time in American history. This is the back setting for the myth story that I'm going to tell you. This is about mythology born right here in this land, not in some far off ancient land, but right here in the Americas. This is our stories. This is our mythology. And our mythology tells us a lot about who we are, right? So we're going to dig into the story. And this is a story of the dolls of Mrs. Cobb, right? And Mrs. Cobb herself in this story is an ancestral guardian. She is a root worker. And what she's working with these dolls are vessels that contain the souls of murdered and enslaved people. Again, this is at the end of the, we're getting to the end of the 1800s. These creatures were used to preserve the forgotten dead and to enact delayed justice. These were sacred objects. They were attached to a portrait containing all the ancestral and physical worlds. The dolls' images often showed a sign of awakening by their disappearance from the images, and their power was collective ancestral memory, resurrection, spiritual pursuit, and judgment. Their moral law was that they do not punish inheritance alone. They punish those who knowingly continue the evil attached to that. So their central themes was around history. So let me tell you now the story of the dolls of Miss Cobb's. In the final days of American slavery, when freedom had already been declared, but had not yet reached every plantation, there lived a wealthy plantation owner who refused to accept that the people he claimed as property would soon be free. So he decided that if he could no longer own them, no one could, and that they would never be free. So before liberation could reach this plantation, the master gathered the enslaved men, the women, and the children under his control and murdered them. Their bodies were burned, but their deaths were never answered for. No court punished their killer. No monument preserved their names. The plantation remained standing, and the murderer's descendants inherit the wealth built by those that he had killed. But the dead were not completely forgotten. A woman named Miss Cobb, remembered as a powerful root worker, came to the plantation after the massacre. She understood that people who had been denied freedom in life could also be denied peace in their death. Without justice, their spirits might wander. Her knowledge of this allowed her to create protection for these dolls. Without justice, the spirits could wander, become lost, or be swallowed by the silence surrounding their murders. So Miss Cobb fashioned a collection of small dolls. She created one vessel for every stolen life. Each figure was crafted by hand, carrying the spiritual identity of the one who was murdered. Through her knowledge of the unseen world, Miss Cobb gathered their displaced souls and placed them inside the dolls, not to imprison them, but to preserve them. The dolls became a hidden community of ancestors. They did not speak in human voices. They did not age. They remained still while the plantation changed owners and the generations passed. But they remembered everything. The names of the dead, the suffering they endured, the freedom stolen from them, and the bloodline responsible. Miss Cobb placed their images within a great portrait, creating a spiritual boundary between the dolls and the living world. As long as the dead were respected, the figures remained at rest. But if the plantation's history was mocked, if the massacre was ever denied, or if the old hatred returned to the house, the dolls would leave the portrait and take physical form. Whenever one awakened, an image disappeared from the painting. An empty space meant that the single ancestor had crossed over. Many empty spaces meant the dead were gathering. An empty portrait meant that judgment had begun. The dolls were small, but their size concealed their true power. Each carried the anger, memory, and will of a murdered human being. They could move unseen, return after being destroyed, manipulate the house around them, and summon the rest of their community. No weapon could permanently kill them because these dolls were only vessels. Breaking the body could not erase the spirit within. But they were not demons, and they did not hunt without reason. Their violence followed an ancestral law. Those who acknowledged the dead had nothing to fear. Those who repeated the crime would face its victims. When the descendants on the plantation attempted to restore the old order using racial hatred, inherent power, or symbols of the nation to protect themselves, the dolls awakened. One came first as a warning. When the warning was answered with violence, the others followed. Together, they delivered the justice that history had refused to provide. Afterwards, Miss Cobb appeared among them, not as their master, but as their guardian and witness. She had preserved the dead until the hour when they could answer for themselves. The legend tells us that the dolls still remain wherever the history has not properly been laid to rest. They sleep while the truth is remembered. But when someone tries to erase the crime, glorify the murder, or reclaim the power built upon these dead, the figures began disappearing from the portrait. And somewhere inside the house, tiny footsteps can be heard. Wow, just a very powerful figure of American mythology there. A great tale, very chilling tale of American justice. The wrath of the dolls. Now I had another story I'm going to tell you, man. Another American mythology story that we're going to sit and listen to tonight. This will be another good one for you, okay? You may know this story. Okay, now this is the story of the Seaman. You know who this gentleman is, so we don't have to get into the use of that name if you understand the myth. But his real name, his original name, is Daniel Robitaille. He was mythically reincarnated as the Seaman. He was a murdered artist transformed into an urban ancestral revelation. His domain remains mirrors, the power of names, memory, racial violence, and forbidden history. His sacred creatures are the bees, themselves known throughout mythology. His sacred substance is honey. His weapon was the hook that replaced his severed hand. His summoning ritual, repeating his names 5 times while standing before a mirror. The source of his power is belief, fear, and the continued retelling of his story. His greatest threat is being forgotten or reduced to fiction. Now, his central contradiction: he demands remembrance but creates the remembrance through terror. Now, the man behind the mirror, the story of the Seaman. Long before the towers rose and the city burned its past beneath concrete, there lived a gifted artist named Daniel Robitaille. Now, Daniel was born in the years around American slavery. His father had survived bondage and built enough wealth to give his sons opportunities that had been denied to generations before him. Daniel was educated, he was cultivated, and he was exceptionally gifted. He became known for painting portraits so lifelike that wealthy families invited him into their homes to preserve their faces for their histories. But talent could grant Daniel access without granting him equality. A wealthy landowner hired him to paint the portrait of his daughter, Caroline, and during their time together, Caroline and Daniel fell madly in love. Their relationship crossed a boundary that white society had constructed and defended through terror. When Caroline became pregnant, the secret was discovered. Her father gathered a mob to punish Daniel, not for the actual crime, but for violating the racial order. The mob pursued him across the city until they captured him near the place that would one day be called Cabrini Green. They cut off his painting hand with a rusty blade, then covering his body with honey stolen from nearby beehives, and the sweetness drew thousands of bees, which swarmed across his flesh and stung him until his body failed. Daniel died, and the crowd mocked him with a name that would outlive all of them: the Seaman. His killers burned his body and scattered his remains across the land, believing that fire could erase both the man and the crime that they had committed against him. But Daniel's blood had entered the ground. His ashes mixed with the soil, and the place itself remembered. And thus was born a legend. Years passed, houses disappeared, streets changed. Cabrini Green was built on the ground where Daniel had suffered and died. New generations arrived without knowing what had lay beneath their very homes. But stories survived where official history remained silent. People whispered about a figure with a hook where his hand had once been. They said bees followed him. They said he lived behind mirrors, watching the place where reflections separated the living from the dead. But most importantly, they said that he could be summoned. A person needed only to stand before a mirror and repeat his name 5 times. The ritual appeared simple, almost childish, but names have always carried power. To speak the name was to acknowledge the story. To repeat it was to strengthen the memory. To say it 5 times before one's own reflection was to open a doorway between the person looking into the mirror and the spirit looking back. Seaman did not become the mirror he controlled. He came because of someone had chosen to make him real. The spirit behind the mirror still carried pieces of Daniel Robitaille. his intelligence, his elegance, his artistry, his love, his rage, and his memory of betrayal. But centuries of repetition transformed him. Daniel had been a murdered man. And the Seaman became everything that the people feared that he might be. Every retelling added to his power. Every terrified witness became another storyteller. Every death attributed to him became further proof that the legend was real. He no longer depended upon a living body because his true body was the story itself. It created the law of his existence. As long as people believed in the Seaman endured. Belief was therefore more dangerous to him than any weapon. A person who exposed the legend as false did not merely challenge his reputation, they threatened his continued existence. And so Seaman protects his legend. He appears when summoned. He punished those who mocked his name. He turned skeptics into victims and victims into evidence. Fear kept people telling the story, and storytelling kept the dead man alive. The mirror. The mirror is the Seaman's sacred threshold. A mirror appears to show the self, but it also contains a reverse world, a place that resembles reality while remaining unreachable. When someone summons the Seaman, they expect to see a monster appear before them. Instead, the ritual forces them to confront what exists in their own reflection. The violence their society inherited, the history their city attempted to bury, the suffering transformed into entertainment, the possibility that repeating the violence also helps to preserve it. The Seaman stands behind the reflection because he belongs to the history that the people carry but refuse to see. The summoner looks into the mirror, expecting to find him. The mythology suggests that the Seaman was already there. Now, the hook that replaces Daniel's hands once used to create beauty. In life, that hand made portraits. It preserved faces, identities, and memories. The mob destroyed that hand because Daniel had crossed a social boundary through both his art and his love. In his death, the missing hand became a weapon. The transformation, it became central to the tragedy. Society took an artist and manufactured a monster, the hook representing creativity mutilated into violence, an instrument of expression replaced by an instrument of judgment. Seaman's most recognizable weapon is therefore also evidence of what was done to him. The bees and the honey. The bees preserve the contradiction at the center of Daniel's story. Honey represented sweetness, desire, love, and temptation. Bees represent community, protection, sacrifice, and collective attack. Together, they contain both Daniel's love for Caroline and the brutality that was used to destroy him. The insects that once killed his body became the signs of his supernatural presence. What the mob used to humiliate him, the spirit transformed into power. The bees no longer obey the crowd. They belong to the Seaman. Evolution of the spirit. Over time, the Seaman grows larger than Daniel had ever been. He becomes a title carried by the unjust murder, a collective figure born whenever racial violence destroys a black life and the surrounding community's attempt to forget it. Daniel remains the legend's central face, but the mythology becomes a hive. Each victim is one bee, each story another cell. Each injustice adds more honey and more poison. Seaman is therefore both an individual ghost and a communal form. He is the memory of one murdered artist, but he is also the accumulated rage of a people turned into stories after being denied justice as human beings. The law of the Seaman is simple. His name must be spoken. The mirror must serve as the threshold. Belief gives him form. Fear keeps his story alive. Denial strengthens his need to appear. Violence creates new versions of this legend. He cannot be permanently destroyed while the conditions that created him continue to exist. A body may burn, a building may be demolished, a neighborhood may be renamed and redeveloped, but none of those things erase a story that is beneath the ground.